On tonight's feature presentation, we are joined by Dan Geisler, the technical director for Sarge's Heroes on the Nintendo 64 and PlayStation 2.
Really appreciate you having this chat. Been really looking forward to this. Obviously, kind of wrap your brain back. We're going back just a little bit over 20 years now. So, yeah, no, I think it's really exciting to just kind of hear your side of working on, obviously, Sarge's Heroes and a little bit of your experience with the 3DO at the time. So if we can bring you back to the mid to late 90s, I guess basically if we could start with how you kind of made your start into the gaming industry and then obviously how that led up to the journey you're at now, just to know a little bit about you.
Yeah, well, I started off in school with computer science, and then I switched over to let's see, business because I wanted to be a systems analyst. They said you could make 80,000, and that was back in the day, which was a lot. Probably 84, something like that, 83 maybe, and then I switched, but I was just bored with the stuff, so I just messed around with computers in all my business classes, and when I finally finished, got a job. Well, I didn't get a job. I applied at a bank. That was the only interview I did as a systems analyst. And I said, "Hey, you probably won't like this job. It's boring." And I was telling them about making video games and stuff. And so I saw an ad in the San Francisco Chronicle, the smallest ad for a video game programmer, and I applied for. I called them up and went to the city and got the job. So, and then that was in '87, and the second game I did was Tetris. So that really got me going. And after that, did a game called Vet, which was a driving game. And then after that was done, I well, I was only making about 20,000 a year, and I said, pay me 40, or I've got to go, and or I said I'll call it electronic arts, and that's what I did, and we got the job right then. I was right after the earthquake in San Francisco in '87, and I oh no, that's '89, and just about 1990, and yeah, I did Road Rash there. It was originally Mario Andretti's Racing that I was supposed to do on Nintendo, and ended up doing Road Rash on the three versions of that for the Genesis,
Right.
and
Okay.
that was cool. And then let's see, ah, after that, I went to Sega for a little while. It was, and they ended up folding, at least all their American development, and I went to 3DO from there. And I knew of 3DO because they were just starting that when I was working on Road Rash, and that was one of their main titles there.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. Also, you said you worked in Road Rash. Was that the just the like Genesis version of that, or did you work on the 3DO version?
No, I worked on the Genesis version, and I just gave them technical advice because they used my code base. They just ported my road effect and stuff, and it's basically the 3DO machine was kind of a chip design that I was working on. I wanted them to be able to have more scaled, billboards, and that's basically what the 3DO was. It wasn't really triangles or 3D geometry. It was kind of a fake 3D.
Yeah, and that's an interesting system to look back on, especially with the short life that it had. And then obviously they wanted to do like that pro version of it was like the M2 or something like that. That
Yeah,
never
that's right.
happened. Yeah, no, it's
But it was ahead of its time, really. It was right in the middle of like the end of the 16-bit and just going to 32, and
mhm.
so they jumped the gun a little early. Plus, getting into hardware manufacturing, that's a trick, you know. But so I went there in I guess it was '89. No, no, no. I'm talking '99 now. Yeah, it was about '99. Yeah, '97 I was at Sega. '99 I was went over there, and I got on battle tanks. They wanted me to just help out finishing that, so I did the special effects and a lot of the weapon systems for them. and then the next project, I was technical director, but really just the lead programmer on the N64 version of Army Men One.
Okay,
And
yeah. So it was solely the N64 version because I think they have you down as the PS1 version as well. So was it just the N64 version?
no, I didn't do the PS1 version. That
Yeah.
was done by well, the who led that? Oh man, he was an old Atari dude. I shouldn't say old, you know. Um, let's see.
Well,
I'll
I know
remember.
they have.
Oh, yeah, Bob Smith was it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that sounds about right because they have Steve and Taylor down for the technical director of the Dreamcast port of Sarge's Heroes.
Yeah, that you know what? That's after I think 3DO went under. It
Yeah,
probably
well, I think it was a month after. Well, sorry, the month before Sarge's Heroes 2 released, the Dreamcast
oh,
port
really?
came out. Yeah,
Huh,
yeah, yeah. It was
didn't know that.
yeah, right in the tail end there. I think it was November, I believe it, no, or something like that of 2000. So it was right, literally the month before Sarge's Heroes 2 came out. Because that was
Yeah.
actually something I was curious about. Obviously, you, so with you having worked on Sarge's Heroes 1, how would you describe your responsibilities? What exactly was it that you did with Sarge's Heroes then?
Well, let's see. Let's see. Basically, uh, I created a level editor, did the AI, all the weapon systems, uh, then yeah, led the programming team. You know, put the team together, and
So
yeah, pretty much.
did you have a
Did
hand in?
almost. I did pretty much. Oh man. Well, one thing I did is they didn't think they could do an inside and outside engine at the same time, and I said, no, I could do it both. You know, both interior and exterior, and so I got that working pretty good. I think. Yeah.
Did you have a hand in obviously all the soldiers in it to get that plastic effect? They have that sheen over them.
Yeah, I called it plasticine just
Yeah,
as a joke, and marketing picked up on it, and so they put plasticine TM. You
yeah,
know,
because it was quite a remarkable thing at the time for the N64. I don't think any other game accomplished something like that. The same
really, that
effect,
was done by
anyways.
Pete Wiseman. He's an English dude, and I think from Manchester. But yeah, he was really good at that. A funny story about that is, it's really called specular highlighting, which they use a lot now. You know, just a reflective. Just an overlay you put on top of the geometry. And Pete was just taking his time, and I wasn't worried about it. I knew he'd get it out. But our producer and designer, Mike Menheim, made a bet with him that, come on, we got to have this. If you can do it by next week, no. And they made a bet that whoever lost would have to show up at the company Friday meeting, in a Roman soldier outfit. Yeah. And in Menheim, Pete got it done, and Menheim had to show up and in the costume that Pete bought him, which was the shortest, like the shortest
Skirt, yeah.
little skirt thing. And he could. Another part of the bet was he couldn't say anything about it. He just had to show up at the meeting like that. It was great. Yeah,
Oh, I'd love to. Oh, if only there were some pictures of that laying around somewhere in some warehouse.
I bet you there are. Yeah.
Oh.
But that was pretty cool. It motivated Pete though. He got it done. Yeah. And
So obviously, you said so you did a lot of work on the weapons. You said.
yeah.
Yeah, so when you were figuring out all the weapons, obviously you're looking at all the little. How did you go about designing all those? Did you think about the basics of like looking at all the figures, like okay, there's the Mortar Man, Bazooka Man, that kind of thing? What was the design process of that?
Yeah, well, Michael Manheim and the original Keith Bullen was the original designer of Army Men. That was his concept. So it was all based on the actual figures in the collection of Army Men. You buy a little bag of them and you get these different poses. So that's what they were going for. So we used those weapons and then added some more, I think.
Yeah, so I assume you were you in charge of like say like with the flamethrower and then all the plastic men catch on fire and has that
Yeah,
lasting
that was
flame
my effect.
effect. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
great. And it was it an intentional design that there's like a button you can press and the character will dive and it seems to like put the fire out in the game.
Yeah, you'd roll around and put the fire out, you know,
Yeah, I
with
always
the
thought that was
with
like a
the
nice little
touching effect.
detail in the game. It seemed like there was no way to ever put the fire out unless you just dove on the ground. I thought that
Yeah,
was really interesting.
yeah. One of the problems I had was some of the controls were, yeah, they were kind of used up by the weapon system, and they basically cut our schedule from a year to 9 months. So that was all done in 9 months, and there's some adjustments to it I would have made in terms of controls. You know,
Yeah,
but
that's what I was going to discuss, kind of get into the controls a little bit. I think it's really interesting when you look back at Army Men. It's the way the 3D controls are done. Obviously, the camera is criticized because it seems to pan more with Sarge rather than fixed behind him. That seems like something you fixed in the sequel because it seems fixed behind him.
yeah, that was tricky. I was juggling a lot of things at the time, and I expected to do the tuning of it at the end. I wanted to have the right joystick be the camera control, and it'd be, Zelda. Let's see, Ocarina of Time just came out, and I really like those controls a lot, and that's what it was supposed to be like. But I didn't get time for it. They came in one day and said, "Well, we got to ship a product. You're the man." So they cut my schedule.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, there's little bits and pieces online about it was a bit of a crunch culture that went on in 3DO a lot of time.
Oh, totally.
It seemed even though there was a lot of really great ideas that you guys never really had the time to really flesh them out.
Well, what pissed me off is they said, "Oh, a B title's good enough," and I said, "What? Shipping a?" I mean, they embraced that, and as soon I set a bad example by our team, getting it out so quickly, and then they thought, "Oh, we could just do that all the time," and
Yeah.
that led into the way they scheduled the PS2 versions as well, and that was a brand new machine, new platform, and we still got one out in a year.
Yeah, it's amazing when you look back at it, especially all the different versions of Sarge's Heroes 1 and 2. I mean, I've got all of them alone. Obviously, there you guys having to pump out, obviously, N64, PS1 version, PC, Dreamcast, and then later on, yeah, as you say, the PS2 version. Was there even a Game Boy version of this, but the second
Yeah,
one. It's amazing and they're all virtually almost like different versions of the game. I mean, you play them all, and they're almost a completely different experience.
yeah, that's strange. Yeah.
That's it.
The original Army Man was more of a strategy based. I think ours was supposed to be 3DO's a Mario, basically,
Yeah,
right?
well, that's where I was going to ask you on the controls. I know you say the inspiration was mostly Ocarina of Time, but it's not a traditional third person the way it's done nowadays with, obviously with shooters now. Obviously, I get you guys had one joystick to work with, so it plays almost like Mario 64, but with weapons. Yeah, is that
Yeah,
what you were going for as well? Because it's almost more platforming, especially in the first one. There's a lot of little buildings and things you can jump on and things over the water and the rocks and things like that. So it's really interesting to see going back. It must have been, obviously this is the beginning of the 3D era, and you guys are just trying to figure out all these different controls for this.
exactly. Yeah.
So I guess you kind of answered some of it with the sequel. Obviously, the biggest complaint in the first one was that camera. Whenever you look at the
Yeah,
reviews,
pretty much controls that affected the whole, ability to, shoot where you wanted to and, point at what you wanted to. And so, yeah, my apologies to all of you out there. And I've done that online as well. I'm so sorry about the controls. So,
I
yeah,
find myself getting so used to it, especially in that first one. It's more of a run, stop, rather than
yeah,
trying to run and shoot. Let that camera catch up with you.
yeah.
Um,
I haven't played it since I did that, since we finally.
Yeah, I'm curious, because sometimes developers do. I don't know if you do or not. Do you have anything laying around, any old beta builds or something on some old drive somewhere or anything like that?
And it's all at my old house with my ex-wife owns that now. But yeah,
Lost the time then maybe.
there's a whole room that's almost it's I have almost every Sega game that was ever made because they cleaned their inventory when I left. We had the final party at a theme park, Great America in Santa Clara, and yeah, they just gave my kids each a full box of every system they ever made and all the toy. I mean, all the games that they had in their inventory. So
Wow, okay,
yeah,
it's like
I have
Christmas
some
came
old
home
stuff.
early.
Then I think every old machine I have is still there. Yeah.
So there's a treasure trove somewhere, so what you're saying is we need to raid your ex-wife's
Oh
house.
yeah, exactly. We're all cool though, so I can go over there and
Oh,
play.
that's
So
good. Alright, no,
we
that's
still
good.
we still break out the Mario Tennis all the time. That's one.
Oh, yeah, which one?
Uh, on N64. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, that's well, that
one
was
of
the
those
first one I
classic games.
started with. Yeah, so no, with the I'm not sure, maybe it was your code or something like that. Maybe you could answer the question.
Sure.
Obviously, with the second game, the camera's fixed. I'd say generally controls a lot better. But it controls exactly like the Dreamcast port that came out a month earlier. I didn't
Oh
know
yeah.
if you maybe had a hand in, obviously, because you designed the controls, maybe if you'd passed off anything to that team because it was Sapphire, I believe, that took control of
I'm
the
sure they
or and
started.
Medway.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure they would have started with my code base. So, or the PS1 wasn't coming out with an N64, I don't think. It's hard to remember whether it was or not. But yeah, I'm pretty sure they would have used my control code, and ported it. Mhm.
Okay. So
So,
rolling back to the AI for a second, I'll see. So
mhm.
you said you were the one in charge completely of the AI
Well,
systems of
I
the
wrote it all, yeah, and
yeah.
I did. But the AI, I I directed the development of a level editor, which and then I created a scripting language for the designers. So basically, they could do all the AI themselves, but the core behaviors of it, I did all that, and then they just stitched them together.
That's
So
interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because the AI seems quite different almost with each level with how the tan soldiers act. And sometimes one will follow you and shoot you, and sometimes it'll almost be like you've gone through an invisible barrier and they'll appear around a corner and then go to a fixed point, start shooting at
yeah,
you.
yeah. That's up to the designers basically. Let's see, I'd follow a path, and then they would take cover or not. Um, let's see. Man, I'll have to remember that. But yeah, it was pretty much in the hands of the designers. They would give it a waypoint, and they could script animations themselves or not. So, or you could let it just go autopilot and have it just run from point to point. Just give it an objective and then find a way, you know. But yeah, it's interesting. I didn't play a whole lot of the levels after I just make sure technically it was all right. Uh, it was funny. One level we had a horrible time with. Let's see, it was in the living room or something, and the frame rate was just horrible after one check in some code or in assets, and couldn't find out what's going on. I go, look, we're getting like 5 frames a second. What's going on? And tracked it down to there was a painting on the wall, and well, it's just we looked at the painting. It's hey man, it's a decal, and then we looked at the picture frame, and it was a million polygons.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's
And
amazing. It was
so
even getting
that
five
was Lance
frames.
Carnes, and we just called him Million Poly Lance after that. Million
Yeah.
polygons.
No, that's amazing. I remember that level quite well. Yeah, it's the living room. Yeah, you're right. With the it was like Christmas themed going on.
That's right. Yeah. So, man, it's funny, just one asset. So we put something in that would just check all the assets for sanity. And, it's funny, I almost didn't do the PS2 version. After the first Sarge's Heroes, I started designing another game, and I was working on that. And a friend of mine, we used to meet in the bar after work all the time. He was I forget where he was working at the time, but Michael Menheim, which is a mutual friend of ours, uh, kept wanting him to go to 3DO. And he's gone, I just told him, don't go there, man. There's total crunch mode. And, you know, finally, Menheim got him drunk on some margaritas and he agreed to take over, do Sarge's Heroes too. And for the next month and a half or 6 weeks, he just was complaining about how the project was sucked and I should take it over. And yeah, I must have got drunk because I accepted, and then took over the team, and I had to make some rearrange the team and bring my old N64 team in, and we nailed it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what must that been like transitioning from the N64, then obviously to next generation hardware of the PS2? How did you guys go through the process of bringing all those assets over, all that code and everything, and then transferring that over?
Yeah, I just brought it all over, and I used some. I just converted it to from the N64 over to whatever language. I think we were doing C++, and yeah, it just pretty much ported over, and I did a couple of tweaks to the graphics, and basically it got our collision system working, over a weekend, and it came over pretty good, pretty good.
Yeah, it's almost like a remaster. When you play, that's almost like a remaster of the N64 version, obviously with the higher
I just
poly count.
ported the whole code base. I took the project and just boom, and then figured out the PS2 differences. In the and Al Corsani, the one who talked me into taking over the project, was um, he had the whole kitchen table, dining room table, and stuff, and that was what he was working with. But he had faked the collision detect. He just set the elevation to a fixed level, so the character could run around, and but it couldn't shoot anything or whatever. So that's the first thing I did was port the code, and it worked. And yeah, I was just really happy.
It's
But
amazing it transferred
it's
over so simply is the way it sounded. I would have thought that would have been such a difficult process.
they wanted us initially. Let's see, it was Richard Hicks and Dave O'Connor who uh, brought me in the conference room and said, "Hey, everyone's going to be working on the PS2 now, and what everyone's going to do is they'll pick their area of expertise, and the teams will work for 9 months, and then we'll have 3 months to do all the content." I go, "That's bullshit. It'll never work." It goes, "Oh, it has to work. We got to get 9 games out, but I'll tell you a secret. We only have to do three." I say, "You're not going to get anything, man, if everyone's working for 9 months on separate parts." I said, "You know what? I'll just go on my own and do it. You know, I'll get Army Men done. Just if you can give me a joystick routine or something, that'd be fine." But actually, we just used all my code so from the previous, had the same team. But yeah, we shipped in. They kept the schedule again. We shipped in about 9 months, or maybe it was close to a year. They didn't ship shit for another, a year easily, and we got it out. So yeah,
What would you say was one of the biggest technical challenges that you ran into, whether it was, say, Sergeant Heroes 1 or 2, but maybe Sergeant Heroes 1 specifically? Was there anything that cropped up that you found yourself struggling with?
um, collision detector was a bitch. The interiors and stuff, and that's to this day you see people like getting stuck in walls and crap like that. I think we did a good job on that. That was a Chris Bannock, another Englishman from Kent. Uh, oh man, him and Pete used to go at it. They were two opposite, you know, two opposite personalities. But yeah, Bannock did a great job on that. All the collision detection. I had to mess around with some of the exceptions, like for camera movement and all that junk. But yeah, it that was really hard. And then also just frame rate in general, you know, on the N64, just how much well, design wanted to put all the, have just tons of stuff in there, so we had to set limits on that. They were basically in control of the frame rate at that point.
Mhm.
But really, really good gamers who did the setting up the scenarios. Uh,
Did you so was the with the multiplayer, was that something you worked on much, the 4-player multiplayer?
yeah, I did the four screen stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and was that something that was always planned from the start with that? Was that something you always wanted to go through? I know originally they had ideas, I think, about even co-op, and the single player, but I think that got cut probably pretty early on.
Yeah. Uh, it was pretty ambitious what they wanted to do. Let's see. Yeah, I think four player. I don't know if GoldenEye came out at around the same time, but we had what Mario Kart, and there's four players, so that was pretty much a feature that marketing wanted. So yeah.
Yeah, was there anything in the game? Because obviously a lot, but due to the time constraints, a lot seems to have been cut from the game. I know there was a lot of ambitious ideas that were left out. Was there anything that you were working on that you had to sacrifice on that you wish maybe could have got into the game?
Um. Well, my biggest thing was just the controls, and that's one thing they really wanted me to nail because of Road Rash. They love the controls, and I didn't get to spend a whole lot of time on it because I was pretty much juggling all the different components of the game. Dealing with design, the writing the scripting language, and the level editor from scratch, and all that. So, it was a pretty big job to do in that time frame. Um, Even though the code ported over, it was yeah, all the new levels and handling that. I think put I don't know if Sarge's one had helicopters. I think maybe they did, but
And there was like enemy helicopters that would come in that you had to shoot down. Yeah.
yeah, right. So yeah, man, just 9 months is not a lot of time, on a new platform like that. So, I did the AI for the yeah, all the bosses and stuff too. So that was pretty much I had to do all that myself. So um, I did get a chance to really expose that to for the designers. So
Mm.
I would have liked to done a little more with that. Another thing, one of my biggest gripes was that I thought we should have redone the way the levels are started, especially the boot camp. I thought it was just bad design to let the player see all the weapons all at once. Because yeah, I would have liked to see them introduced throughout the levels. Kind of something to push for, and uh, get a sense of accomplishment when you get that bazooka. It's like, man, that's the holy grail, right? You don't want to give that right from the start. You want to tease with it, and get the players really stoked when they get it. But if you can go into
100%.
boot
Yeah.
camp and just get it all at once, just that I really had a problem with that.
No, I can understand that. Yeah, because it seems like they kind of just sprinkled the weapons everywhere and at just about every
Yeah,
level. It doesn't seem like too much of progression. I think you can get the flamethrower in like 10 seconds of the first level, even.
yeah, I think it'd be good if your squad had those weapons, but you don't get to actually use it until a certain point, and so you keep bringing them back to the boot camp, right? Yeah, it's like the training level, and then you're basically out of control. Your M16 or whatever, but then in later levels, it's boom training on that, and you go back to the boot camp. So I had an issue with that, but yeah. Other than that, I would have liked to use my nuke too from battle tanks. That was my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just nuke everything.
Yeah, no, it would been great to have some kind of nuke weapon, maybe melts all the Tan army or something. That'd be great.
Yeah, at least in 4 player where you just you know.
100%, yeah.
Yeah. I would have loved to like blown up all the geometry in the level and have you see it just
Because
waste.
there's a little bit of destruction in the game. You use the get that bazooka or grenade or something, get near something, you can blow up some objects. I think most of the buildings all have a different texture and design that they go to when they blow up. It almost seems like it was hinting to something more, you know?
Yeah. I would have liked to have destruction, and Al had the main graphics guy. He came up with the technique of being able to blow holes and stuff, and you could see through it. It would have been a cool effect. Uh, I don't know if we actually blew holes in the army men. I don't know if we had that technique down. He was working on it though. He didn't get that in. So I would have liked to seen, shooting limbs off and whatnot.
Yeah, I don't think that anything like that was introduced until Sarge's War. I assume you were probably maybe gone by then when they
Yeah, I think
started.
radio was gone by then.
Yeah, well, I
But
think they'd
I
only.
weren't involved in all the spin-offs. They were coming out with like six different Army Men spin-offs. I
Mhm.
thought, man, you're just like watering things down. It's too much. So
It's a
yeah,
shame because it seems like Sarge's Heroes was really where you guys could have found your footing and created a really good franchise there, especially having all these new, really interesting characters, these new weapons. I mean, I always look back at it and I'm like, man, I wish these guys had just I don't know, a year longer development.
yeah, it would have been nice. I think they really, and I don't want to rag on the game because it is a lot of fun. I just that polish, that last bit of polish, it makes all the difference. And some of the tuning and difficulty.
Of course, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think there's much I could complain about. I mean, I was 4 years old when I first got the game. Still my favorite game. I still play it all the time. Got it on my shelf. So
Well,
I always look back at it and I defend it a little bit when people try and get nasty on it and Reddit and things like that. And I find myself trying to defend it all the time. But yeah, no, I love it. And I think it's amazing what was accomplished in such a short period of time.
oh, thanks. Yeah, it was one of those where I always felt it was just a little unfinished, but the core was there, and you know. Menheim, who was doing all the levels design, and he did most of the dialogue, and we had Lee Ermey, the guy from what was it?
Metal Jacket.
Yeah, Full Metal Jacket. He was doing the voiceover for Sarge and stuff. That was
Mhm.
great.
Mhm.
So it was one of those things. It was a time just before the 2003 kind of financial blow up. When
Yeah,
we had just come out of '98, which was a crash too. So we, man, strapped for cash. But
of
I think,
course.
getting those games out in the time they did, they said, Sarge really did save the day for the company, and they just ran with it.
Yeah, it seems like it really was. I think it was their most financial franchise. Really, was the Sarge's Heroes. I know Army Men had been doing
Yeah.
well, but they were putting out so many. I think it started to trickle down, and then it picked up again
Yeah.
with Sarge's Heroes.
Right. Mm.
Obviously, you mentioned Arlie Army there with Sarge. Was that something early on? Because it was Jim Cummings did all the voices for the men in the game. Was that something they were dabbling with Arlie Army?
Yeah. From what I understand, that was who did the voices for that. You know,
Mhm.
so um, hmm, yeah, I'd have to check on that. Yeah.
I think. You mentioned obviously you being you still good friends with Michael Mendheim.
Oh yeah.
Did you spend much time collaborating with him on the project? I know it's quite a small team. How much did you feel you were bouncing back and forth with him? Was that, or did you it was kind of given a basis and you ran with it?
Yeah. There's some stories I could. Hmm. Yeah, we talk quite a bit, and it's mainly about you know I don't know. Man, I'm trying to dig up the memories. But
No, it's
yeah,
okay.
well, yeah, I don't know. Like sometimes I'd go over to his place, and his wife was in an all-girl band, and I, would jam with them sometimes, and yeah, so when we met, yeah, it was pretty much always Sarge talking Sarge, and give it a rest, man, But no,
Yeah.
he's just like, man, that guy is all energy, he just, prolific, and it's the stuff he does. You know, he did the what was it, Mutant League Football, and just came out with uh, a new version of it. So yeah, I always, you know, really admired his work there. I think, um, yeah, I mean, we had our disagreements with things, when it comes to gameplay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, well, I think I was to bring back to something you said earlier when you were talking about the different squad mates. Obviously, in the game, it's called Sarge's Heroes. It's got Bravo Company. They seem to make, have a big part of the game. But then when you play in the game, you save them and they kind of disappear. I didn't know if there was anything you had been maybe working on early on that you didn't have enough time to work on. If maybe they were going to play a bigger role in the game.
yeah, that was pretty much in Menheim's hands. So I don't, you know,
Wasn't sure if there's anything maybe they had you scripting
uh,
on early on that you maybe didn't have enough time for.
yeah, I thought you could be able to, should have been able to pick your characters, but and play as different ones. But they wanted to focus on Sarge, it being the new Mario, or
Mhm.
they really wanted to, stick with one character. I think. Um, but I had some squad-based AI that I wanted to put in. I don't think I ever got around to it.
Mhm.
Where you could have, a lot more of a, put a little more strategy in the game for, like the original Army Man had, where it was, place your guys, and it was time. Do you have to go here? And it was almost like one of the strike games from EA at first. And I think that's where Bolin came from. He was working with John Manley on some of those strike games, and that was, they were kind of strategic. You had waypoints you had to get to, and a little more strategy. So um, yeah, I think the squad could have been used a little bit more.
Makes
It was
sense. Yeah.
pretty linear in terms of the level, level stuff. You got to go here and there, and
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I was going to ask you about. I'm not sure if that's something that came up much in with you, where you say geometry and things like that was one of the biggest pains. In the first game, it's a lot more open. I'd say you get plopped into a level, and you kind of have to find your objective, and then you make your way back. As in the second game, it's a lot more linear. It's more like here's a beginning point, here's an end point. What
Hmm.
was the process on that?
um, I'm not sure that's really, in terms of the descriptions that Menheim gave me, was just those objectives in a level, and I just created a system that could handle all that going to waypoints and stuff, and the designers had a lot of involvement in that. So
Yeah. Did
I
did you?
know I know Michael he's really a visual person, and he wanted to get just like these cinematic shots where you climb up on top of the counter in the kitchen and you look around, and so he's really uh, yeah, really focused on, he's thinking camera angles of where you're at, and so it's just tried to get you through as much of the level of geometry as possible. I think
Okay, yeah.
that's what I remember in terms of that gameplay.
Mhm.
But
No, that makes
I would
sense.
have liked to see more of maybe you have the goodies hidden over here and there, and I think there were some pretty good stashes of like secret spots and stuff that I think it was Rob Zalot put a lot of fun stuff in there. He was one of the main designers I worked. He was the lead designer, level designer, well, he didn't design the levels, but he put the guys in and made the gameplay for him.
Right.
And I remember one time it was shortly after I gave him the scripting language, and there was this one level, and I thought it was kind of a bug. And I said, "Hey, these guys keep popping up behind this log, and it's really hard to get through this." He goes, "No, it's whack-a-mole, man." I go, "What?" And so he has these guys, they're just popping up and you snipe them. And yeah, I go, "No shit, man. That was pretty cool." I never thought they'd be able to do something like that. Yeah. But yeah, there's a whole whack-a-mole thing, sub game. Yeah,
Did
it's pretty
you
good.
did you find what was the development time like between Sarge's Heroes 1 and 2? Because I think there was only like a year between release.
Yeah. So, well, after Sarge won, um, yeah, I basically was going to start a new project, my own design, but yeah, then I was convinced by Al Corsani to come and save the project because it was floundering. You know, they didn't really have someone who was in charge of engineering that was able to do it. So, um, yeah, and then when I turned down the PS2 stuff and said it couldn't be done, then I just when I came onto the project, I said, "Well, I told Richard Hicks, he was like the VP of engineering, and I'd known him since EA, and yeah, he hired me there to do Road Rash, um, and so he let me just go ahead and do it on, even though it wasn't the company strategy. And so they came to me then and cut my schedule again, of course. So uh, if it was only a year, yeah, I didn't goof around as much as I wanted to after Sarge one. Then, yeah,
Yeah, I didn't because the games aren't largely different between 1 and 2. I didn't know if there was many changes you found yourself doing between 1 and 2. I feel it feels like with the second one, maybe it possibly a lot would may have been held back or something because there
yeah,
isn't a whole
Sarge
lot of changes.
too, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
man, that's a blur. I don't know. It just, yeah, I was using the same code base, so it just,
Mm.
one and two, it just seems like the more levels and whatnot for me. I mean, there was, um, a lot of times we just sat on Fat Baby and trashed the company, and we started fights with EA Canada. Said, Canada blows goats and stuff like that. I had one engineer just would tease them all the time on Fat Babies, which was just a website where people just trashed their companies. And we did a lot of that.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
ask, so what was the work culture like at 3DO at the time? Well, at least between your team.
Man, let's see. Well, on my team, anytime we get someone new on the team, and that happened a few times, um, we'd take them out to what's the Prince of Wales, and it's just a pub with outdoor eating and inside. But they had this world's hottest hamburger, and there was a habanero burger. So I'd get everyone in my Suburban and drive over there, and you'd have to take the habanero challenge if you want to be on the team. That's part of the interview process.
So that's the
Well, no, we
induction
hire them
process.
first and then do that. And usually they wouldn't make it back for the afternoon. Driving back, and I don't feel so good. I go, "Oh, we'll go in the chili room and lay on the futon. So and yeah, it was really cool. With we had a lot of the people who did the old Atari games. Like we had
Mhm.
Todd Fry who did Pac Man, and then Howard Scott Warshaw who did Warsaw who did E.T. And then we had Bob Smith and Rob Zadibble and just all these old Atari guys. And we'd just go out to lunch and, like Thai Tuesdays or whatever. And there was a Scooby van out there, and, just, you'd see the smoke coming out of it. And dudes were, I don't know, I don't want to mention names, but, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, it was cool. It was just, um, most of the work got done out back. We all smoked cigarettes and we're just, you know,
I
we
imagine
just,
there's that crunch culture going on there at 3DO.
what's that?
I said I imagine it seemed like a crunch
Oh yeah,
culture going on really
pretty
with
much everyone
3DO.
had a a foam mattress under the bed. I mean, that was their bed that was under their desk. Uh,
Wow.
yeah. Sometimes I think it was one Saturday I was sleeping under my desk, and I get up and there's some people in the office, and I didn't expect anyone to be there. And I'm like, oh man, I better put my pants on because I was just in my boxers. That would have been an HR nightmare.
Yeah, I can
Actually,
imagine.
P. Wiseman, he was working on the specular highlighting effect. And we were looking at what was it, Tomb Raider, and he started making. He goes, "Oh man, look at those! Look at those boobs!" And no one. This is late at night. No one's in the office, so
Yeah.
yeah. And he goes, "Man, they should bounce though. I want to put that in there." And I go, "Well, yeah, you'll have to bone it. You have to put a couple of extra bones in there." I don't. He goes, "Oh yeah, bone the breast." But and well, it turned out there was an artist that and she was working in the cube
Mhm.
across from us, and so I don't know how crude it got, but we didn't mean anything by it. Well, it turns out that Chris Bannock that day had complained about her like playing her music at about 6 o'clock, and so it was after hours, and she's not playing blasting it, but Bannock was just, I can't stand it, and he gave her a bunch of crap about it, and I didn't know that, but so in retaliation, she called HR on me and Pete, and so like the whole company had to have training.
Oh my god, yeah, that's funny. Looking back, yeah, I think that's every young boys now from my generation. The PS1 Lara Croft, those triangles.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, Pete was obsessed with him. He really wanted to do it. So I don't think we couldn't afford the bones though.
Hmm. So I guess trekking it back to Sarge's Heroes before we start wrapping things up, is there anything from Sarge's Heroes, maybe any lessons that you took away from it that maybe you took on when you left 3DO that you look back on?
You know, um, you know, make sure you're on a project or on a team that really gets along well because you spend so many hours. I mean, engineering and you know, you just you got to know where to make your compromises. Excuse me. Yeah, yeah. I guess that and just have a clear vision of what you want. Uh, don't get on a project where the design isn't solidified.
Or
You want
yeah,
to have most of it done and do it technically. Do a technical, design doc on it. Make sure that you're not biting off more than you can chew, and that prototype early. I would say get your core mechanic down fast and have that, make sure it's fun, But an open-ended design where they can just keep adding things, or if they switch like the core gameplay, yeah, that's just a real red flag. And get yourself in a position if you can of where um you have final control if you're in a technical direction or an engineering spot or even you got to know where to take your stand and say no. This it can't be that way, or it should, it's a tough one. um yeah, you got to know when to hold your ground and just stick with what you know is good gameplay, and believe in yourself that way, when um yeah, I guess that's it, and then back up what you take your stand on, know
of
when to
course.
pick your battles and just get along with people.
Yeah, definitely. I was agree. That's probably one of the most important things, especially having people around you that you can enjoy being around, especially working on a project like that.
Yeah, and you gotta be able to, cut loose and have some fun time too. Um, yeah, don't give up your life for it. You have to enjoy what you're doing. And as soon as you stop, enjoying it, it's no one enjoys crunch mode, but uh, really when you're doing a game or something you love, it's not really work. You gotta make sure to fit the rest of your life in there too. You know.
Of course, yeah, that's some really good advice. I think one of the last things is with Sarge Heroes. Believe it's owned by 2K now, the Army Men franchise.
Mhm.
Anyways, I think they've all but forgotten they even own it themselves, unfortunately. But to say hypothetically, if they were to do a remaster, reboot, or remake, whatever it is, of Sarge's Heroes today, and you were the technical director on it, what is some of the biggest changes that you think you would make on it, or do you feel you would try and keep it true to what it was, or would you take this as an opportunity to make these changes that you wanted to do?
Um, Man, well, I'd make it more open world and a little more strategy to it, or like so you could pick different missions and it wasn't such a linear storyline. It kind of it would evolve a little bit more, and
So you definitely make it more open ended.
it would just be more depth to it.
Hmm.
Um, I'd like a little more. Mm, Yeah, maybe more vehicle action too. I mean, I'm not saying GTA 5 or whatever.
Yeah, no, of
But,
course.
I think it would have been fun to, have a little more. Well, they didn't want to go battle tanks, but I think, yeah, just a little more use of the vehicles.
Well,
I'd like to fly the helicopters and have that missions and jump out and
yeah.
you know just have the world open up to you.
Hmm.
Beyond just the house.
No, definitely, yeah. And what's interesting you say that with the vehicles, because the PS1 version it has like very limited use of like the tanks. I don't know if that's where they threw in some of those battle tanks code. You get a little bit of driving in the tank, and then that's it. It's always felt like there should have been more with that, and then I
Yeah.
always felt that was missing from the N64 version.
It would have been easy because I had just come off battle tanks anyway, so it wouldn't have been a problem.
Yeah, no, I always thought it was such a shame. I always really wanted when I was a kid maybe a plastic tank mode in the multiplayer or something like that. It would have
Yeah,
been great to have that maybe one day.
we could do so much more in special effects too. Yeah, um, man, yeah. Corsani, he just had. We were doing a thing called. Let's see. After Sarge, we went on to. What was it? Oh, Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse,
Mhm.
and I was just directing the special effects basically, and Um, man, he had it. You could blow holes in people and just see it. You could see the bones, like the rib cage, and the heart beating inside. And it was pretty gross, But we could have done a lot more with the,
Yeah,
you know.
definitely. Yeah, no, I'd love to see some plastic dismemberment or something like that in there. I think that would have been great.
Yeah, I would have liked to seen a little more strategy. Yeah, and
Mhm.
especially some jibbing and stuff like that. Destructive environments would have been fun just to go through and start blasting things. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, in terms of gameplay, just yeah, longer missions, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, ones that may evolve over several levels. Pretty cool. Oh, also have to, you know, m- do something to earn the weapon. A little more
Some
progression.
progression, yeah. Definitely, that would be really interesting. Well, I
Yeah,
guess.
it
I'm
was a
sorry.
lot of fun to work on. It was a lot of fun to
Mhm.
work on. Great team, and for the most part, everyone got along. So
It's nice to hear you look back on it fondly, especially I know it does have its fan base a lot larger than I ever knew. Really, I'd say recently discovered that I'm not the only one that's still really loving this game. And it was great to see you taking part in some of it. That's where all this started. I think you replied on to comment on Reddit. Someone had saying that they'd got Sarge's Heroes.
yeah. I just it means so much to me that there's people that still enjoying it now, and because when it was done, I felt it was undone, and I always felt a little bit down about it, and wish I had been able to go back and do a revision of it. And yeah, it's just really cool that there's so many people enjoying it, and I know the rest of the team would feel the same way. Yeah. And
Yeah. Yeah, no,
yeah,
it really means a lot. I mean, I find myself, I have, the figures and all the games and everything, and it means a lot to me. I know it means a lot to so many people. I mean, we really do love the game, and that's why I found myself desperately trying to go through the credits, and then I reached out to you, and I was so glad to be able to
that's
have some
cool.
time with
Yeah.
you to be able to find out more, because there's just not much on the game, online, and it's so sad because it's such a big franchise, and I feel like it would be great to have some more knowledge of it out there, especially the people that worked on it.
Well, I'm on Reddit, so yeah, I like to jump in and answer questions and stuff. So I could do it. Ask me anything, some point if anyone wants to.
Of
But
course, yeah,
yeah,
no.
I really like I really like answering questions to some of the games I've done. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think a lot of people would appreciate the sort of Q&A or something like that. Because I know
Yeah.
there's a lot of people like myself that are really interested just about some of the development behind this game.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and I'll think I do have some more stories to tell on some of as I recall it. But man, that was what geez, 20 something years, 25 years ago. So
Well, it'd
still
be
keep I love it.
Yeah, well, it'd be really interesting. Maybe another time, speak to you again. With working on battle tanks, that's another favorite of mine. Maybe we can go back through some of the history and recall some stories from that. But I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to me in this past hour on Army Men. It's been great to find out all this extra information. So thank you so much for speaking with me, Dan.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
That's been a lot of fun. I hope we can do this again sometime. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Take care.
Take care. Speak to you later.